shouldn't have watched it. I shouldn't even be telling you this. But I need you to hear it, because if I keep it inside, if I let it sit and rot in my head the way it has been for weeks now, I don't think I'll survive. The images keep playing even when I close my eyes. And sometimes I swear I still hear the tape spinning in the dark. I'm talking about a VHS tape. Just a regular, black plastic Disney VHS tape. You probably had a shelf full of them as a kid. Those clunky white cases stacked in your living room. Each one promising an afternoon of songs and magic and castles in the clouds. I grew up on them too. I can still remember the way the plastic smelled, faintly chemical, like new toys. I remember blowing into the VCR when it got dusty, the thrill of seeing the big blue Disney logo stretch across the screen, and that cheery little fanfare that meant I was safe, entertained, comforted. That's what I thought I was getting when I found this one. Nostalgia, harmless, simple nostalgia. But this wasn't like the tapes I grew up with. Not at all. The one sitting on my desk right now is heavier, like it's carrying something inside it that doesn't belong. The plastic is cracked at the corner, jagged and sharp, as though someone tried to pry it open and then gave up halfway. There's a strip of masking tape slapped across the spine where the title should be, and the handwriting on it. It doesn't look like a child's, or even an adult's. It's shaky, uneven. The kind of scrawl you might see scratched onto a bathroom stall door. And the word itself, just 3 letters. Black marker, bleeding into the paper, Don. I've been staring at it for hours, fighting with myself. Part of me wants to smash it to pieces, burn it, bury it. But the bigger part of me, the same part that pushed me to put it into my VCR, that first night, wants to look again, to make sure what I saw was real. Because if it wasn't, then maybe I'm not losing my mind. I'll tell you exactly what was on that tape. Every disturbing, impossible detail. But not yet. First, you need to understand how I got it. How something like this even ended up in my hands. It wasn't from eBay or some shadowy online auction. It wasn't slipped under my door in a padded envelope. No, it came from somewhere a lot more ordinary. Somewhere you've probably been yourself 100 times. And that's what makes this worse. Because if it happened to me, it could happen to you. You know that feeling when you find something that shouldn't exist, like a word in a book that's not supposed to be there, or a face in a family photo you don't recognize. That's the feeling I had the second I saw this VHS. It was buried among the usual clutter-scratched DVDs. Old board games missing half their pieces, stacks of romance paperbacks no one ever wanted. And then there it was. It didn't belong. It looked older than the rest, covered in dust like it hadn't been touched in decades. I picked it up, and for a moment, I thought I heard something shift inside. A faint rattle, like loose film, or something else. My stomach dropped, but I couldn't put it down. I should have. God, I should have. Because that was the moment my life stopped being mine. That was the moment I brought home the forbidden tape. And if you're still listening, still curious, I'll tell you exactly where I found it and why the man who sold it to me told me, half joking, half serious, to never, ever press play. Asterisk, it was a Saturday morning. The kind where you don't plan anything important because the week has already chewed you up and spit you out. I was driving through a neighborhood I didn't even belong in, just passing time, sipping cold gas station coffee when I saw the signs. Bright neon poster boards taped to street lamps. Yard sale gives with arrows pointing down a row of quiet houses. Don't usually stop for those. 9 times out of 10, it's just baby clothes and chipped coffee mugs. but something about that morning pulled me in. Maybe it was the nostalgia itch, the thought that I could find an old Goosebumps book or a forgotten cassette that would remind me of childhood summers. I parked, walked up the cracked driveway, and found myself surrounded by folding tables stacked with the typical junk. I wandered a little, running my hand across a box of tangled Christmas lights, a pile of yellowed cookbooks, stacks of CDs no one had listened to in 20 years. And then, tucked beneath a cardboard box of National Geographic magazines, I saw a flash of white plastic. I bent down, pulled it free, and felt my chest tighten. A clamshell VHS case. That thick, chunky rectangle of childhood. The plastic was yellowed with age, but the embossed Walt Disney Home Video logo was still there, still proud. Like it hadn't realized its kingdom had fallen to streaming, and BLU-Ray.I opened the case. Inside was the black VHS tape with its familiar blue label and shiny Disney hologram. It was The Lion King. I swear for a second I was 8 years old again, sitting cross-legged on the carpet, waiting for Circle of Life to shake the walls of my living room. That's when I noticed the rest. A whole milk crate of them shoved under the table. Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, Toy Story, The Little Mermaid. My heart did this stupid little leap. Nostalgia hunting is a disease. Tell yourself you'll just look, but the moment you see something that tugs at your childhood, your wallet's already in your hand. I pulled the crate closer. Some of the tapes looked normal, but a few didn't. One had the artwork misprinted, the title slightly off-center, Ariel's eyes looking the wrong way. Another was missing its label entirely, just a strip of faded white with black marker scrawled across it, test copy. A couple had weird stickers slapped over the spines. One said, property of Walt Disney Studios, do not duplicate. I laughed to myself. Probably bootlegs, I thought, or production samples that had slipped through the cracks. Either way, it made them more interesting. Find something you like. I looked up. The seller was a man in his 60s, wearing a faded baseball cap, the kind of guy who looked like he spent more time in hardware stores than anywhere else. He squinted at the tapes in my hands. Yeah, I said. Didn't expect to see these here. Takes me back. He chuckled. Yeah, they don't make 'em like that anymore. Then his smile flickered, just for a second, when his eyes fell on the one at the bottom of the crate. A plain black tape with a strip of masking tape slapped across it. The word Don scrawled in fading marker. He reached for it instinctively, like he was going to pull it away, then stopped. His hand hovered over it before he shoved it back down into the crate. Careful with that one, he muttered. People say it's cursed. He said it like a joke, or maybe half like a joke. His eyes didn't quite match his smile. I laughed. Awkwardly. Cursed Disney movies. Huh. That's a new one, he shrugged. I just sell what people drop off. You want the box, $20 and it's yours. But if I were you, I'd leave that one out. And that should have been the end of it. I should have laughed, taken my stack of Lion Kings and Little Mermaids, and gone on with my Saturday. But I didn't, because curiosity is dangerous. I almost didn't buy it. I almost walked away, told myself I didn't need another box of clutter, taking up space in my apartment. But something about that plain black tape sat like a hook in my brain. Why was he so quick to dismiss it? Why the strange warning? And why did the handwriting on the label look so frantic, so wrong? So I handed him a crumpled 20. He stuffed it in his pocket, handed me the crate, and said, almost under his breath, "Don't say I didn't warn you. If I had just..." left that box there, if I had just shrugged and gone back to my car, I'd still be sleeping at night. I wouldn't be waking up at 3 in the morning to the sound of static. I wouldn't be jumping at the flicker of cartoons that shouldn't exist, but I didn't walk away. I carried that crate back to my car, the black tape buried at the bottom like a secret I wasn't supposed to uncover. And that night, after I got home and set the box on my living room floor, I made the worst mistake of my life. I pressed play. I remember sitting cross-legged on the floor, the crate of tapes pushed off to the side, the black one sitting in my lap like it had been waiting for me all along. My hands shook as I slid it into the VCR. The plastic door snapped shut with a click that echoed too loud in the silence of my living room. For a second, nothing happened, just the faint hum of the machine, the mechanical whir of gears catching the tape. Then the TV screen filled with static, not the clean, snow-like static. You see, in old movies, this was darker, denser, like a swarm of black insects crawling across glass. It hissed through my speakers, a low, hungry sound that prickled the back of my neck. And then it began. The familiar blue Walt Disney home video logo appeared, but it was wrong. The color was drained, as if it had been photocopied too many times. The cheerful music stretched and warped. The trumpet notes dragged like they were being played underwater, sour and distorted. It was the same melody I'd grown up with, but hearing it like this made my stomach twist. Still, I told myself it was just an old tape. Warping happens. Magnetic film degrades. It was probably nothing. After the logo, the tape cut to the Lion King's opening scene, sunrise over the savannah, animals gathering, the circle of life swelling in the background. I almost laughed with relief. For a second, it felt normal, safe. Nostalgia washed over me, but it didn't last. The colors were off. The sunrise looked pale, almost sickly, a weak yellow bleeding into grey. The animals moved sluggishly, like someone had slowed the frame rate just slightly, and their eyes didn't look right. Giraffes craned their necks too far, bones bending at impossible angles. The elephants' tusks were black, not white, and the birds flying across the sky left trails behind them, like smears of ink. The song was wrong too. The choir's voices cracked, stretching into pitches too high for human throats. The words slurred into each other until they sounded less like singing and more like screams. Buried beneath the music, I kept telling myself it was just the tape. Bad transfer, cheap recording. But my chest was tightening. I couldn't look away. The scene cut suddenly. No smooth transition, no fade, just a hard jolt, like someone had ripped a piece of film out and taped it back in. Now it was Beauty and the Beast, Belle walking through her village, singing Bonjour. Except the villagers weren't moving right. They weren't looking at her. They weren't looking at anything. Their faces were blank, their mouths opening and closing in slow, repetitive motions, like mannequins trying to remember how to be human. Belle herself looked wrong too. Her eyes were too wide, her smile stiff, and when she turned to face the camera, because it felt like she was looking at me. Not just the audience, I swear, her pupils dilated. The background was shifting too. Windows that weren't there a moment before suddenly appeared. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, spilling across cobblestones, curling toward the screen like reaching fingers. My throat went dry. I reached for the remote, ready to stop it, but something kept me frozen. Curiosity again. That sick little voice whispering, "Wait, see what happens next." The tape jumped again. This time it was Aladdin. The Cave of Wonders, its massive tiger, head rising from the sand. But the sand wasn't gold. It was dark, clotted red. The tiger's eyes glowed white, and its roar came through distorted, garbled like a corrupted audio file. "Seek thee," the voice thundered. Then the sound glitched, replayed, repeated. "Seek thee, seek thee, seek thee," until it became a harsh, rhythmic growl that rattled the walls. My hands shook. I fumbled for the eject button on the remote, pressed it hard. Nothing happened. The tape kept playing, and then the screen cut again suddenly, violently. For a moment, it was nothing but static. The sound drilled into my ears, louder and louder, until I thought my speakers might blow. Behind the static, shapes flickered shadows, silhouettes that looked almost human. Too many limbs, faces smeared across the noise. Then, just as quickly, it cleared. Now it was Mickey Mouse. The old school version, black and white, grainy. He was walking down a street I didn't recognize. Empty storefronts, broken windows, no sky above, just darkness. His smile was wide, but it didn't reach his eyes. His feet shuffled in place for too long before he finally took a step forward. Then another, each one jerky, unnatural. The music was gone. No cheerful whistling, no bounce, just silence. I swallowed hard. My skin felt cold. The air in the room felt heavy, pressing down on me. I couldn't do it anymore. I reached for the VCR itself, ready to hit the eject button manually, yank the tape out, throw it across the room. But then, right as my finger brushed the button, the screen flickered again, and it changed. Asterisk, the screen cleared, and for the first time since the tape started, it didn't feel like I was watching a scrambled mess of spliced together films. This felt deliberate. A single, continuous cartoon. The Disney logo flickered briefly, warped and uneven, as if drawn by an unsteady hand. Then it cut to black. For a long moment, there was nothing, just silence. I thought maybe the tape had finally jammed, but then a title card appeared. It was hand-drawn. Scratchy white letters against a dark background. The Happy Kingdom. I frowned. I'd never heard of that before. I grew up on Disney VHS. I knew every title, every spin-off, every special edition. But the Happy Kingdom wasn't one of them. The episode began with Mickey Mouse, standing in front of Cinderella's castle. Only it wasn't the gleaming, pastel fairy tale version we all know. The castle looked wrong. The towers leaned at strange angles. The windows were boarded up, and black stains streaked the stone walls. The sky overhead wasn't blue, it was a sickly grey, rippling like it was alive. Mickey's trademark grin stretched too wide, his head tilted just a little too far to one side, as if his neck couldn't hold the weight of his oversized skull. His voice was cheerful, but the pitch wavered, like a recording being warped in real time. Asterisk, welcome, folks. He chirped, welcome to the happiest place on earth. But his eyes didn't blink. Not once. Behind him, characters started appearing. Goofy shuffled in, his movements jerky, limbs bending at angles that made my stomach knot. Donald waddled forward, his beak opening and closing like he was trying to speak, but no sound came out, just a low, wet clicking. Minnie was there too, but her face was blurred, as if the tape had been smeared. Her bow was crooked, and her hands twitched at her sides like she couldn't keep them still. Asterisk, and then they all turned. Not toward each other. Not toward the castle. They turned toward me. Toward the screen. "Have you come to see the fireworks?" Mickey asked. I froze. It wasn't a line from any script I'd ever heard. And the way he said it, tilting his head forward, his smile sharpening. He wasn't asking in general. He was asking me. I almost spoke out loud. Almost said, "What?" But then the background changed. The castle melted away, like wet paint sliding down glass. In its place was a dark carnival. Rides I half recognized. The teacups, a Ferris wheel, a carousel. But they weren't moving right. The Ferris wheels spun too fast. The teacups jolted violently from side to side, and the carousel horses were nailed in place, their glassy eyes rolling as if they were alive. A distorted calliope tune played in the background. The music box notes wobbled, stuttered, then cut out completely, leaving only the sound of the rides grinding against their gears. Goofy stepped closer to the camera. His eyes bulged, his jaw swinging open far too wide. "It's so fun here," he said, but his voice was wrong. Too deep, too human, like someone else was speaking through him. "Don't you want to stay?" My skin crawled. The camera panned through the carnival. For just a second one frame I thought I saw something spliced into the footage. A flicker of an image that didn't belong. I rewound, paused, and nearly dropped the remote. It wasn't a cartoon at all. It was real, a morgue slab. A pale hand with a hospital band around the wrist. The frame vanished as quickly as it appeared, but I knew what I saw. My mouth went dry. My pulse thudded in my ears. I should have stopped there. I should have turned the TV off, unplugged it, smashed the tape with a hammer. But I didn't. I kept watching. The episode cut to another scene. Now it was Main Street, the iconic Disney parade route, but it was empty. No crowds, no floats, just characters walking slowly down the street, dragging their feet, their costumes, shredded and stained. The camera angle was low, almost like it was filmed from a child's perspective. Minnie finally spoke, her voice static-filled, broken. "They don't leave. None of them leave." Donald turned his head sharply toward the camera, and for the first time, sound came out of his beak. It wasn't his usual squawk. It was a whisper. "Look behind you." I froze. My head jerked around. Instinctively, scanning my empty living room. Nothing, just shadows. When I looked back at the screen, Mickey was inches away from the camera. His face filled the frame, eyes wide, pupils stretching until they swallowed everything. "You came here," he said softly. "That means you belong to us." The screen flickered again. Subliminal frames. I started seeing them more clearly now. Faces I didn't recognize, children crying, fireworks exploding in absolute silence. Mascots with their heads torn open to reveal nothing inside. Between the images were flashes of coded text. White letters against black. "Do not look away. Keep watching. This is for you." Every time I blinked, I saw them burned into my eyelids. The episode reached its climax. The fireworks Mickey had mentioned finally began, but they weren't bright colors in the sky. They were fires, explosions tearing through the carnival, the castle crumbling in flames. The characters didn't scream, they just laughed. Long, distorted laughter that grew louder and louder until it shook the speakers. I couldn't take it. My hand hovered over the power button, ready to end it. When I noticed something, the laughter wasn't only coming from the TV, it was behind me too. I spun around, but the room was empty. The sound cut off instantly. When I turned back, the tape was still playing. Mickey and the others stood in the ashes of the carnival. Their bodies were blackened, charred, but their smiles never faded. They looked straight at me again, and then the screen went black. For a long time, I thought it was over. My whole body sagged with relief. But then a single frame flickered. One image, I won't describe it. Not yet. I'll save that for later. Because if I told you now, you'd probably stop listening. And I need you to hear the rest first. All I'll say is this. It was worse than anything else on the tape. Worse than the carnival. Worse than the whispers. Worse than the fireworks. And the second I saw it, I knew I wasn't done. I had to keep watching. Asterisk, when the screen went black, I finally had the sense to hit the power button. The TV clicked off. The VCR whirred to silence. And my living room was plunged into the kind of darkness that feels too thick, like it's holding its breath. I sat there for a long time, staring at the blank screen, trying to convince myself that was the end of it. But the sound didn't stop. Even with the TV off, I could still hear it. The faint hiss of static, like a radio tuned just past a station. It wasn't loud, not enough to be obvious, but once I noticed it, it pressed into my skull. A sound that didn't belong. I pulled the plug from the wall. The noise kept going. My hands shook as I turned away, telling myself it was just in my head. I'd been staring too long, letting my imagination take over. I tried to distract myself, made coffee, scrolled on my phone, even put on music, but the static was there, crawling under everything, like it was woven into the air itself. And then came the voices, faint, buried under the hiss, but real. Laughter, warped and distant, like it was playing down a long hallway. Sometimes words slipped through too fast to catch. Once, I thought I heard Mickey's falsetto voice, clear as day, whisper, "You belong to us." That was when the paranoia really started. I live alone, but I kept glancing at the corners of my apartment, convinced I wasn't. My walls are covered in posters from when I was a kid, cartoons, movies, the kind of stuff you keep around because nostalgia makes it hard to throw away. But the shadows under them started to shift. I'd look away, look back, and swear Goofy's arm was bent differently, or Ariel's eyes weren't pointing where they should. I tried not to look in mirrors. Every time I did, I caught glimpses of shapes behind me. The rounded ears of Mickey, the long snout of Pluto, there for a split second, gone when I turned around. I know how it sounds. I know you're probably thinking I'm exaggerating or making it up. But if you think I'm lying, go check your own old tapes. Dig them out of the basement, put them on, and look closely, really closely. You'll see it too. I was on the edge of breaking when my phone buzzed. A familiar name lit up the screen, a friend who calls me at random, usually just to talk about nothing. For a moment, I almost didn't answer, but I needed to hear another voice. Needed proof I wasn't losing it. "Hey," I said, trying to sound normal. "You sound weird," she laughed. "What's up?" I hesitated. "You ever see something on TV that wasn't supposed to be there?" She snorted. "Like what?" "Scrambled porn channels." "I'm serious," I said. My voice cracked more than I wanted it to. "Like cartoons that talk to you. Stuff that looks back." There was silence on the line. Then she sighed. "Dude, you've been watching too many creepypasta videos. Get some sleep." I opened my mouth to argue, but the line glitched. A burst of static screeched through my phone, so loud I yanked it away from my ear. For a second, I thought it was my imagination again, until I heard it. Laughter, the same distorted laughter from the tape. "Hello," my friend said. Her voice was breaking up, warped, stretching like it was being pulled apart. "What's that noise? I can barely." Then another voice cut in, higher pitched, too familiar. "Stay with us." Her voice vanished. The call dropped. My stomach flipped. My hands were clammy, the phone slippery in my grip. I tried calling her back, but it went straight to voicemail. That's when I realized I wasn't just imagining it anymore. The tape wasn't on, the TV wasn't on, and yet the static, the voices, the presence, they were bleeding through anyway. I tried to sleep that night, but it didn't help. My childhood bedroom, the one place that should have felt safe, wasn't anymore. Posters of Disney movies lined the walls, smiling characters frozen in time. But in the dark, their eyes glimmered faintly, as if catching light that wasn't there, and the shadows moved. I saw them twitch in the corners, saw ears twitch, saw tails flick. Once, I swore I saw Mickey's round silhouette stretch across my ceiling, too large, bending in impossible directions. I buried my face under the blanket, heart hammering, telling myself it was just my brain playing tricks. But the blanket didn't block out the sound. The static was louder now, filling every corner of the room. And under it, layered faintly, voices whispered like a lullaby. "You don't leave the kingdom. Once you watch, you're ours. You belong here." I don't remember falling asleep. I only remember waking up to the TV in my room turning on by itself. The screen glowed pale blue, empty, humming. The VCR whirred softly, though I hadn't touched it since, and sitting there, right on top of the machine, was the tape. I never put it back there. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't just some cursed tape that slipped out of Disney's vaults. They knew. They still know. Because if it were an accident, they would have destroyed every copy. They wouldn't have buried them in yard sales, or let them trickle into basements and thrift stores. No, they wanted them out there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone stupid enough to press play. Like me, and now that I had, I wasn't sure there was a way back. Asterisk, I knew I couldn't carry this weight alone. The tape had infected my life, like mold creeping into the walls, and no amount of denial was going to scrub it clean. I needed answers, so I did what anyone does when reality doesn't make sense anymore. I went online. There were forums for everything: lost media hunters, VHS collectors, even old-school Disney fans obsessed with the tiniest bits of trivia. At first I found nothing but nostalgia threads and bootleg tape swaps. But the deeper I dug, the more obscure the corners got. Places where the posts were archived, half broken, with usernames long since deleted. That's where I first saw them, threads whispering about the buried tapes. Most of it looked like jokes, people daring each other to dig through thrift shops, talking about haunted VHS collections, grainy screenshots that looked like bad Photoshop. But the way some posters worded their replies, they weren't joking. They spoke like survivors. One name kept surfacing: the archivist. I almost didn't reach out. Every bone in my body screamed to let it go. But curiosity is a parasite, and mine had already dug in too deep. I sent a message, just a simple one. "I think I found one of the tapes." Asterisk, hours went by with nothing. I tried to sleep, but every creak of my apartment made me think of cartoon eyes watching from the shadows. Then, at 3:12 a.m., my inbox pinged. A reply: describe. That was all. 2 words, no greeting, no signature, just a command. I told them everything, the dusty casing, the warped footage, the lost episode that had spoken directly to me. My hands shook as I typed, but it felt like confession. The reply came minutes later. You shouldn't have watched it. That was the moment I realized whoever the archivist was, they believed me. Asterisk. We went back and forth for hours. Their messages were clipped, deliberate, like every word was filtered through caution. They told me the tapes were never meant for the public. They weren't prototypes, they weren't test animations. They were something else. Back then, the archivist wrote, Disney experimented. Not with characters or stories with people. The tapes weren't movies. They were tools. Programming disguised as entertainment. I stared at those words until they burned into my retinas. Programming, they explained how subliminal frames were. Inserted into seemingly innocent cartoons images that bypassed conscious thought and burrowed into the subconscious. A morgue photo here, a flash of coded text there, just long enough for your brain to register without understanding, enough to mold children, enough to create loyalty. Most of the experiments were locked away, buried under corporate vaults. Never meant to surface, but some copies slipped through. The archivist didn't say how or why, only that collectors sometimes stumbled across them. Don't finish the tape, they warned. That's how they find you. I asked what they meant. Who was they? Disney? Something else? But the archivist didn't answer directly. Instead, they said, every time you press play, you're giving them permission. That's the test, and once you finish it, you can't uninvite them. I remember staring at that last line, cold, sweat dripping down my back. Permission, as if just by watching, I had signed a contract I didn't understand. The archivist signed off with one final message: burn it. Bury the ashes. Don't look back. And then they were gone. Their profile disappeared, wiped clean like it had never existed. I should have listened. I should have taken their warning and rid myself of the tape once and for all. But here's the truth. When something is forbidden, when someone tells you not to know, it claws at you. I couldn't stop thinking about the frames I hadn't seen yet. The way the episode had cut off mid-sentence, as if saving the worst for last. My mind replayed the archivist's words. Don't finish the tape, and twisted them into temptation. Because if finishing it was dangerous, wasn't that proof there was something left to see? Something no one else had survived to describe. I told myself I'd only watch a little more, just enough to satisfy the gnawing itch in my brain. But that's the lie we tell ourselves, isn't it? That curiosity can be managed. That we can open the door just a crack and still stay safe. So I pressed play again, and I didn't stop. I finished the tape. Asterisk, the final segment didn't begin the way I expected. There was no fade, no warning, just a jagged cut like the tape had been ripped apart and stitched back together by someone who didn't care whether it made sense or maybe cared too much. At first, it looked like the standard opening to every Disney VHS I'd ever seen. The white castle rising against the blue sky, fireworks crackling above in delicate bursts. The jingle chimed, that familiar little fanfare I'd grown up humming. For a fleeting second, I almost convinced myself the archivist had been exaggerating, that I had let my paranoia twist harmless nostalgia into something monstrous. But then, the fireworks didn't fade. They kept going and going. Too many, too close together, bursting across the sky like artillery fire. Smoke blackened the sky until the castle was barely visible, and then, slowly, I saw it begin to burn. At first it was just a flicker along the turrets, an ember catching fabric. But the flames spread, hungrily swallowing the white stone, curling into shapes that almost looked like hands reaching out. The smoke turned a sickly green, and the jingle warped into a dragging moan. I froze, gripping the arms of my chair so hard my knuckles burned. This wasn't some glitch. This was intentional. The happiest place on earth was burning, and it was only the beginning. The film cut to the characters Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Goofy, except they weren't right. Their outlines sagged, their colors bled like watercolors. Left in the rain, Mickey's round black ears drooped like wax. Goofy's teeth elongated until they jutted out at sharp, predatory angles. They smiled, but it wasn't joy. It was hunger. They walked through the park, but the park was wrong too. The rides rusted and collapsed. The carousel horses twisted into skeletal things with exposed ribs. The teacups spinning so fast they blurred into a whirlpool. And everywhere in the background, shadows shifted and twitched. I swore I could see. Children, half-formed, eyeless silhouettes standing perfectly still as the mascots paraded past. Then came the laughter, high-pitched, innocent at first. Children laughing, but it looped, grew distorted, slowing until it was more like screaming filtered through a broken speaker. The screen flickered, inserting frames that lasted less than a blink, a morgue drawer sliding shut, a close-up of an eye with dilated pupils, text that flashed too quickly to read but left a ghost impression behind. I leaned forward, trying to catch one of the words, and immediately wished I hadn't, because the longer I stared, the more I realized the words weren't meant to be read. They were meant to be felt, burrowing straight into the hindbrain, where language melts into instinct. Obey, consume, sleep, never wake. The images sped up, blending into a montage that battered me with dread. I saw the castle again, reduced to blackened rubble. I saw the smiling characters waving from the wreckage like monarchs on a throne of ash. I saw the audience, rows upon rows of faceless children staring at the screen, their heads tilted in unison, and then the sound cut out. Just silence. I thought the tape had broken, but then the picture steadied. The screen faded to black, and for several long seconds there was nothing. I could hear my own breathing, ragged and uneven, and the faint hum of the VHS player grinding on. That's when it appeared. The frame. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. It was wrong. Not because of gore, not because of violence, but because it felt true, like something I wasn't supposed to see, something my brain wasn't wired to process. It lingered longer than any subliminal insert before, just one still image burning itself into me. My stomach lurched, my skin crawled, my eyes begged me to look away, but I couldn't. I could describe it to you, I could try, but I won't. Not because I'm afraid you wouldn't believe me, because I know you would. And once you see it in your mind, you'll never get rid of it. It'll follow you into your dreams, into the dark when you close your eyes, and you'll wish you never read these words. I'll just say this. It wasn't fiction. It wasn't fantasy. It was something real, smuggled into a children's tape, preserved on magnetic film as proof of something Disney or whoever controls them never wanted us to know. And here's the part that scares me most. I know you want to see it. Don't you? That little gnawing in your chest right now, whispering, show me. Show me what it was. That's the trap. That's how the tape works. That's how it finds you. I tried to eject it then. My hand slammed down on the VCR button, but It wouldn't stop. The machine word screeched, but the frame stayed, glowing brighter, almost pulsing. The walls of my room flickered with static, like the shadows themselves were caught in broadcast snow, and then the lights went out. Every bulb in my apartment popped in a chain reaction, plunging me into darkness. The only illumination came from the screen, that cursed frame staring back at me. My own reflection warped across the glass, stretched and twisted until it wasn't my face anymore. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, but there was nowhere to go. The static grew louder, bleeding from the speakers into the air itself, buzzing inside my skull. I could taste it, sharp, metallic, like chewing on aluminum foil. The characters' voices whispered under the static, layered and overlapping, fragments of sentences I couldn't piece together. Mickey's cheerful falsetto warped into something low and guttural. Stay with us. Minnie's giggle, shrill and cruel, forever. And then, right as I thought I'd go mad from the sound, the screen went black. Silence. For a heartbeat. I thought it was over, that I'd survived, but in the darkness, I heard it, the faint whir of the VHS player rewinding itself. The tape was starting again, and just before everything cut off, swallowed whole by the static, I heard one last voice, not from the tape, not from the machine, from right behind me. Do you want to see it again? And then, nothing. Asterisk. I know how this all sounds. Another late-night horror story, something to laugh about in the daylight, to pass around like a campfire tale. But I promise you I didn't make this up. And if you think I did, that's fine. In fact, I'd prefer you didn't believe me, because disbelief is safer. But if one day you stumble across a cardboard box at a yard sale full of cracked Disney VHS tapes with no titles, remember what I said. Don't play it, don't rewind it, burn it. I wish I had, because ever since that night, I can still hear the static. It leaks into everything, the hum of my fridge, the buzz of the streetlights outside, the silence before I fall asleep. Sometimes I wake up in the dark and swear I see faint blue flickers crawling across my ceiling, like the tape is trying to project itself onto my walls. I unplugged my TV. I even threw the VCR out, but that doesn't matter. Whatever was on that tape doesn't need the machine anymore. It's already inside me, and maybe inside you now too. You read this far, didn't you? You wanted to know. You followed me frame by frame, word by word, all the way to the end. That's how it spreads curiosity. That's how it finds new homes. I won't describe the final frame to you, not directly, but someone else will. That's the worst part. Someone out there has seen it too, and eventually they'll break. They'll put it in words, or they'll sketch it. Or maybe they'll upload it in some corner of the internet, where Disney's lawyers or something worse will never look. If you're that person, leave a comment. I need to know I'm not alone. Was it supernatural? Some cursed artifact born from all the happy lies and bottled up nightmares of children's television? Or was it corporate? Subliminal tests, secret programming, experiments on young minds dressed up in colorful mouse ears. Maybe it was both. Maybe that's the real horror when magic and capitalism shake hands. I can't give you the answer, but I think some of you can, so tell me your theories. Drop them below. Was this a ghost story, a conspiracy, a confession, or something in between? And if you've ever seen a tape like my Nenny VHS with warped covers, wrong artwork, or no label at all, share your story. Trust me, people will listen. I'll listen. Because the more we talk about it, the harder it becomes for them to cover it up. There's a kind of safety in numbers. At least, I hope there is. I used to love Disney. I used to hum their jingles. In the shower, collect their Happy Meal toys, plan trips to the park like it was some holy pilgrimage. Now I keep the TV unplugged and sleep with my back to the wall. Funny how nostalgia curdles, isn't it? But hey, maybe you're braver than me. Maybe you're rolling your eyes right now, muttering, "It's just a story, just a creepypasta." If that's what you think, then do me a favor. Next time you see a stack of tapes at a thrift store or a flea market, buy one. Take it home, play it, see what happens, and when you do, don't forget to rewind, or maybe you shouldn't, because who knows what comes back when the tape starts. Over, and if you think this is just another internet story, something you'll forget by morning, then wait. Wait until the box shows up at your yard sale, until you pick it up and see the dust on the case, the faint smudge where a label used to be, and that little ripple in your gut that whispers, don't play it, but you will. We always do.